Man, 7 years since Injustice 2. I owe this game a lot. It was the first fighting game I took competitively. It introduced me to the wonderful world of the FGC. Not this part of the world, don't look at this. And it's the first game I did a video on for my channel with my whole Injustice 3 wishlist. This game did a lot for me, but it's also a game I don't look back at too fondly as a whole. Despite my love for superheroes and fighting games, it's one of those games where the more I think about it, the less I like. It's weird. To give you some backstory, the first game I was conscious enough to remember playing was Marvel vs. Capcom 2. My brother and I played it a bunch at a Chinese takeout place where they had cabinets of MVC2, KOF 97, Third Strike, Tekken, and a bunch of other shit. That Chinese place helped spark my annoying passion for both fighting games and superheroes. I owe that place the world. MVC2 as a dumb kid was a life-changing experience, and as I grew older and actually began to understand how the game worked and stuff, I just loved it more and more. It's my second favorite game of all time. MVC2's impact is larger than life. And you might be asking, well, how is your villainous origin tied to Injustice? Well, the two things I love the most about Marvel 2 are in Injustice, being superheroes and fighting games. In the 2000s, I was introduced to DC through a bunch of animated shows: Batman, Batman Beyond, Superman, and of course, Justice League. And to this day, I still think those shows are the pinnacle of DC. After watching those shows, I was waiting forever for DC to get its own fighting game. And I did get one with MK vs. DC, but it wasn't as magical a pairing as I would have hoped. I appreciate that it exists, but I can't say that this is exactly what I wanted, even as a kid. But a few years later, Injustice 1 was announced, and it looked to be the game that I wanted for so long. And it was, despite how stupid, busted, broken, and blatantly unfair this game was. It was peak. I love Injustice 1 to this day, from its presentation to its love for its characters, or at least the classic ones anyway, to just how much of a power trip it could be. That game was a comic book-ass video game. Every character could do some really stupid shit, and the scope, scale, and speed of the fights, as well as the world it took place in, made it feel like superheroes at their peak bullshittery duking it out. Naturally, I was excited about a new game in the series, and 4 years later, oh look at that, what do you know? Injustice 2 had a pretty cool marketing cycle. The graphical improvement was very impressive considering how their most recent game looked at the time. They went from this to this in 2 years. That's insane. The roster was filled with really interesting picks like Dr. Fate, Black Canary, Blue Beetle, Cheetah, and especially Swamp Thing. And even though my boy Shazam didn't make the cut, I wonder why. I just realized that 2 of my favorite superheroes have been lasered to death by Superman. What did DC mean by this? But anyways, even though my boy Shazam didn't make the cut, characters like Cheetah and Flash caught my eye. The Flash's trailer just had my mind blown with all the cool shit he could do. Then the game officially came out and I was hooked. I played it non-stop for weeks and I was getting my shit kicked in left and right by players who were just constantly styling on me. For your information, I was a huge fighting game nerd prior to Injustice 2. I played any and every fighting game that came out under the sun because it's just a cool ass genre of video games. But I didn't understand shit like frame data, or frame traps, or Oki, or meaties, or all that good stuff, and I just didn't care to at the time. I was never good at them, and I never understood them the way I do now. I just played them, and I had a lot of fun doing so. But when Injustice 2 came around, this was the game where I decided that I finally wanted to get good. So I started watching tournaments and mimicking what players were doing, and pretty soon, not only did I get better, but Injustice 2 served as my official gateway into the FGC. I was aware of it before, but only had a very surface level knowledge of it. But that started to change once I began watching weeklies for the game alongside other games, and constantly had my mind blown at what was possible. It made learning and understanding fighting games as a whole so much fun. When Injustice 2 was active, that's where I got to know the NRS scene. Not personally, but you know what I mean. Names like Sonic Fox, Dragon, Samij, Biohazard, Rewind, Perfect Legend, and a bunch more. My favorite player to watch was Honeybee because, number 1, very few people played my main in this game, which was Cheetah. Number 2, Flash was my second main. And 3, Honeybee's Flash was incredible to watch. They didn't call him the Flash Godlord for nothing. So many cool moments that I will never forget losing my mind over.
And if he does that, that's not breakable stuff.
Oh, he's going to take a bet on this. Did he get it? There's in time. Oh!
We're going for a ride, baby.
Goddamn, dude. The Flash in this game is hands down one of the sickest fighting game characters ever made. He's so cool. Anyways, the rest of Injustice 2 and its scene was fun to experience for the small amount of time it lasted before MK11 came out. Had some hype characters like Red Hood, Starfire, and Black Manta, as well as some pretty sick guests like Hellboy and the TMNT, Sub-Zero was dope, and Raiden. I'm not going to lie. I do not like Raiden in this game very much. He is so boring in this game. He practically stopped existing a week after he came out.
I will banish you to the
No. Shut up. Fuck you. Go in the box.
by the Elder.
But yeah, even after Injustice 2's support ended, I was just very glad the game showed me the awesome, even if fickle, communities that exist around fighting games. But what about the game itself after all this time? How it plays, what it has to offer, etc, etc. I had issues with Injustice 2 while it was heavily active, but that was a while ago, so I wanted to revisit the game and reevaluate the issues I had with it. Just to be fair, you know, I didn't want to come back to this and just blindly spit out shit that I don't even remember about it. Otherwise, it would just be a waste of time, you know. I played through the campaign again, and after completing it, it is still by far and away my absolute least favorite NRS campaign. It's well produced, and it has a couple of intriguing character threads. The most fascinating one to me was Supergirl finally arriving on Earth and seeing firsthand the monster Superman has turned into. It's a very interesting dynamic. The dual ending was also a cool touch, but the rest of the story I think is super weak. It doesn't juggle the cast nearly as well as MK9 or Injustice 1 in my opinion. The story is all over the place with very weird moments like this where Grodd throws Harley in the middle of the floor, Canary and Arrow hardly acknowledge it, and she just disappears when the fight starts. I mean, it's funny, but like, what? Certain characters that should have a bigger impact on the events of the story just don't get used very well, mostly Dr. Fate and Firestorm. Not to mention, I had to re-experience the hell that was Wonder Woman all over again. Oh my god! I fucking hate this bitch. And let me be clear, I'm not talking about Wonder Woman. She's one of my favorite heroes of all time. She's awesome. She's a great character in comics. I love her interpretation in Suicide Squad, and I can't wait for her solo game, even though WB will probably fuck it up somehow. I am talking about Injustice Wonder Woman. I despise this version of the character more than any other character or interpretation of a character in fiction, and I am not exaggerating. I do hate her with a passion. So that's the campaign, but what about the gameplay? Well, for me, it's weird. It has a lot of cool characters who are fun to play. I main Cheetah because she is one hell of a character. A highly defensive, highly mobile, rushdown grappler who can melt your health bar with her trait. Plus, she's incredibly similar to Shazam, who I mained in Injustice 1, but Cheetah is way better. I honestly don't know why she wasn't used more. She is really stupid. The characters themselves, for the most part, are really interesting, and the game has a lot of cool mechanics that felt very meaningful, especially defensively with push block, air evades, and rolls. On paper, it's a recipe for success that I should really enjoy no matter what. I love games with explosive damage and robust defensive options. It's why I love KOF so much. But what threw me off coming back to this game was the feel of it. NRS games have always felt stiff with how their movement works, but games like MKX, Injustice 1, and MK9 felt much faster and better to control. Even though you could feel the sluggishness of those games and they were just as prone to being cinderblock-footed bullet hell fighting games, they still felt fast and responsive. Injustice 2 feels more dialed back in terms of game speed and chaoticness. I'm not saying this game isn't stupid or doesn't have stupid bullshit in it. It definitely does, and it is more mechanically dense compared to the MK games, but it just doesn't click as hard as it once did for me. It was the first game of theirs where how characters handled actually started to bother me. Lots of delay between actions, an awkward buffer, and movement, while not that slow by any means, wasn't as responsive as I would have hoped. And the end result for me ends up being a game where superheroes don't feel like superheroes. I felt like that about Injustice 2 a while ago, but playing it again reconfirmed that feeling. It is way too measured for my liking, given who these characters are and what they're capable of. They shouldn't care about shit like frame data or neutral or any of that dumb shit, you know, just let them go crazy. The game doesn't have that essence about it, and it's not just in the gameplay department, but also the overall presentation. Comparing this to Injustice 1 is night and day visually. The fidelity of the models in Injustice 2 is way higher, and it's way more colorful. Slap these two side by side, and 99% of people are going to say Injustice 2 looks better. But Injustice 1 had so much more personality to it across the board, and it truly felt like a comic book video game. The UI was very stylized and dedicated itself to representing each character as uniquely as possible. The color and icon of characters' meter gauges changed depending on which costume they were wearing. Mwah! I love stuff like that. The stages were packed with characters and famous devices across the DC universe, not to mention a lot of them were iconic vistas. And while Injustice 2 has some revised versions of these stages, they are so flat in comparison. Let's compare the two Fortresses of Solitude real quick. Injustice 1 has the Phantom Zone, Superman's ship that he came to Earth in, bubbled cities, butch lesbian doomsday, and an entire alien zoo. Look at how alive and intriguing this is. It really embraces the sci-fi element of Superman. What is Injustice 2's Fortress of Solitude? A flat surface with standard machinery and regime memorabilia. Where did everything else go? Where's Clark's pod? Where's the Phantom Zone? Where are the alien animals? Where the fuck is butch lesbian doomsday? You bastards!
We had a good thing, you stupid son of a bitch.
And it's not just the Fortress of Solitude. I implore you to compare shared stages between Injustice 1 and 2, as well as the entire stage list, and you will see how alive the stages feel in Injustice 1. It truly feels like a game set in the DC universe. Whereas 2 to me feels like they just wanted to show off how far they came visually. And it looks good, don't get me wrong, but it's missing the soul of DC to me that only a couple of characters bring to the game, and both of those characters are guests. And the last thing I wanted to go over was the gear system. It was the main new thing about the game, and at the time of release, I commended it. Every character having their own unique customization options to the extent that they did was really impressive, and that's coming from a guy who used to mess around in Soul Calibur's character editor a lot. But slowly but surely, the gear system completely lost its appeal for me, and I don't know why I liked it as much as I did back then. The game does have a lot of items and choices, but I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the gear just doesn't look great on most of these characters. Everything is so overly armored for most of the cast, including some of their base designs. It's not an aesthetic I enjoy very much, it's too much. I appreciate how much work and effort went into the gear system, but this really makes me appreciate skins a lot more. Whenever Injustice 3 or the next DC fighting game happens, I just want skins, please. Just skins. They are a much better option in my opinion. Just look at Injustice 1 and MK1, and even MK11 to an extent. I'd much rather have skins with color palettes than earning gear, colors, and worst of all, character abilities through RNG. I played this game for more than 950 hours, and I still don't have all the shaders or all the character moves yet, including the Staff of Grayson. I did as many multiverse towers and events as possible when I played this game, opened trillions of loot boxes, and I still didn't get everything the game had to offer. Shaders are one thing, but character abilities being locked behind RNG always baffled me. It makes no sense to me that you spend all that time and talent as a studio animating, programming, and implementing moves that may never be used or even seen. It makes no sense to me that character abilities weren't unlockable by just leveling up the character of your choice since the game has character levels for gear and stuff. It makes no sense to me that these moves were not allowed to be used in competitive play whatsoever. And it makes no sense to me that character kits were even divvied up in a game like this where you play as some of the most overpowered beings in fiction who are beating the shit out of each other. Why not just give them all of their tools to begin with? It just created so much unnecessary disparity between characters for no reason. This was the biggest issue that I had with the game, and I'm thankful that they have completely abandoned that philosophy in MK1. They're actually adding moves for characters and are continuing to do so, and that is the benefit of having a game that will be supported for a long time, a luxury Injustice 2 never had. And I often thought, man, if this game had a longer lifecycle like Street Fighter V or Tekken 7 did, it could have blossomed into something that I would have truly loved forever. But now, I don't think that would have ever been the case for me with just how much there is about this game that I don't enjoy as much as others do. Also, I feel like there was another 2017 superhero fighting game that would have benefited from a longer life cycle, and after 7 years, it's finally getting it. Oh my god, I'm so excited for this, but let me get back on topic. As I said at the beginning, the more I talk about Injustice 2, the less I like it. And it's a weird feeling to have considering how much this game helped me fall more in love with the world of fighting games and all who inhabit it. No matter how many gripes I may have with this game, it will always have a special place in my heart, and I can't overstate my gratitude for what it did for me. And that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the game 7 years later, so please leave a comment down below, leave a like and sub if you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching.